Well, Naledi, we were expecting this morning that Advocate Zandile Mshololo would again try to move towards the character of Tumelo Madlala as a close friend of Senzo Meyiwa, again referring to the monies that were paid to him for his participation in the Netflix documentary. You would recall he still refuses to say how much he was paid for his participation there. But what Advocate Zandile Mshololo did in this instance was to ask him if he had paid or given any part of that money to any of the Meyiwas, or even to Senzo Meyiwa's young child. Advocate Zandile Mshololo asking him whether he knew that his best friend was married. He said yes, he knows that Senzo Meyiwa had paid lobola for Mandisa Mkhize, who we know was Senzo Meyiwa's wife, and that they had a young child. Advocate Zandile Mshololo questioning why he did not even take some of the proceeds of what he had gained from his participation in that documentary, why he didn't even give some of that for the well-being of Senzo Meyiwa's child, basically trying to point to him as someone who was greedy, who was not trying to share any of the money that he had gained from personal photographs that he had shared with the producers of Netflix for that documentary, and basically saying, Tumelo Madlala saying he didn't see the need to do that. He thought that the Meyiwa family would basically be responsible in a nutshell for the well-being of Senzo Meyiwa's child. Another thing that has also come under the spotlight before we get to that, when we arrived in court this morning, you would recall one of the occupants that was also inside the house is Mthokozisi Twala. And Mthokozisi Twala, we are expecting, I think, Naledi, it could be possible that he could be one of the people who would take the stand next. I am not sure about that at this particular time. I'm also threading very carefully on the basis that we're not allowed to say who is going to take the stand next. But his lawyer was inside court this morning. His name is Wesley John Rogers. He was here in the court this morning to establish whether he could be on watching brief on behalf of his client inside court. Now remember, we had a similar incident take place in which Magdalene Munsami, who is the legal representative for Kelly Khumalo, was the then girlfriend of Senzo Meyiwa. He was also inside court this morning, but what we saw once the court had started was that Rogers then sat in the gallery and not in the area where the legal counsel sits. So now, in terms of what we're understanding by the law now, and I also just briefly ran it past some of the counsel, is that he is allowed to sit in the gallery and not in the same area where the legal counsel would sit. So he is inside court, but sitting in the gallery where everyone else is sitting and not where. It's a bit of a tricky one, because in an instance like this, that means he still is then sitting inside the courtroom and listening to proceedings before his client is likely to take the stand. So I guess legally, that's a question that we could perhaps put to other legal experts about what the difference then is of, one of the lawyers being allowed inside the gallery. He's still getting to listen to the testimony. The difference is simply that he's sitting in the gallery and he's not sitting where the legal counsel was. And remember, at the time, Magdalene Munsami was sitting where the legal counsel was sitting. So I think that is the difference in this particular aspect. Very importantly as well, before we go back inside court, Naledi, is that a lot of focus from Mshololo was also put on whether police had done any tests on the occupants inside the house at the time that this incident had taken place, or after the incident had taken place. Now remember, this is important because they would have been able to gauge what the alcohol levels were of the occupants inside the house. Remember, Advocate Zandile Mshololo yesterday also pointing to the part that, or suggesting that Madlala was drunk at the time that he had identified one of the intruders inside the house. So she basically saying, how would this court even be able to establish how much they had drank if there were no tests that were taken from any occupants inside the house? And also what we're hearing here now, which corroborates the previous testimony that we've heard, was that no gunshot residue or residue on the hands of any of the occupants that were inside the house was taken. This has now also been confirmed or confirmed by Tumelo Madlala, who tells us that police didn't even take any swabs off their hands. Now that would have been able to determine if any of the individuals inside the house had pulled the trigger. Police simply did not do that. So that really brings into question the manner in which police had handled the crime scene, because I'm sure some of the legal experts that you will speak to, or forensic experts in this particular matter, will tell you that one of the first things that should have been done was, if beer cans had been found on the floor, was to test the alcohol levels of the individuals inside the house. That did not happen. Secondly, they were supposed to do a test on the hands of the individuals that were inside the house when this incident occurred to determine if any of them had pulled the trigger. Did that happen? It did not. So this certainly pointing to the manner in which police had handled the scene at the time or after this incident had taken place. So that again expected to come extremely under scrutiny.